with me as always is Miss Di Marie. Di, what's going on?
Hello.
And of course, JennaSayWhat is here. Jenna, what's going on?
Hey.
So if you guys haven't figured out what we're talking about this week, these two lovely ladies decided to cosplay Loki. And again, I am not a cosplayer, but they look great. And I do everything else when it comes to Pop Jedi, so leave me alone, honestly.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Yes, you are.
So we have a couple things to mention at the top of the show. Just want to let you know we thank you all for your continued love and support. Please like and subscribe. It definitely helps us get out to more people. And we want to talk about our new fan base when it comes to the Army of the Dead cast. We had quite a few say that they really enjoyed the show, and that's huge for us, especially, being in the new endeavor like this, that is encompassing all of geek culture and popular culture. So we got a lot of love from the Army of the Dead cast, which is amazing. And with that, we ended up getting our first guest for the show, which is going to be the Zombie King himself, the Alpha, the Zeus, the stuntman for films like Batman v Superman, 300. He was Big Daddy Mars and John Carpenter's Ghost of Mars. We're going to be talking to Richard Citrone. We're just setting that up, for his schedule, for his availability, but that's going to happen. And we're real excited to get started on the actual interview process for the show too, to bring more things in terms of our entertainment. So before we end up talking about Loki, we do have some very minimal news when it comes to Top Jedi this week. We just had one big news story, come across the pipeline, maybe about 2 hours before we start filming. But Jenna, what's first in Top Jedi this week?
Well, Seth Rogen, and never did I think I'd say this, but and Nickelodeon are set to produce a CG animated reboot of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is expected to hit theaters August 11th, 2023. Seth tweeted what looks like a page from my science notebook in high school, complete with like a Leonardo sword, a vial of ooze, and my personal favorite is the 90s S symbol, which will date me, and so, but everybody here knows what I'm talking about. But I digress. I spotted some types of mutations on that page. Did I print it out? Yes, I did, but it has some types of mutations that he wrote down, like deletion, duplication, translocation. So what these little symbols mean, if he released it on his Twitter, there's got to be some clues in here. So
yeah, there was some interesting stuff. I mean, like it talks about honor on there, obviously, and
discipline.
Apologize to April, which is interesting. But Seth Rogen's, he's not only just, personally, I think he's a comedy genius, but he's also just a genius in general when it comes to all this stuff. Like he had everything to do with Preacher when that was on AMC. He is, kind of part of the boys when it comes to executive producing and stuff like that. This guy really knows this world. He is a geek at heart. So, and he's a stoner too.
Yeah.
Which is like perfect fodder for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dialogue. You know what I mean? Like he's the perfect choice.
I know my turtle and I are very excited about that movie coming out. I think I have my helmet somewhere.
That's awesome.
I'm ready for it.
So Diana, what's next in Top Jedi?
So 3 days ago, Jamie Lee Curtis posted a silhouette picture of Cate Blanchett from Borderlands portraying Lilith. She described her as a legendary heroine, psycho-blasting, vault-hunting vixen with a bad attitude and the queen of everything. Shortly after that, about 8 hours ago from when we were filming today, the official Borderlands page on Instagram and Twitter posted even more pictures from the set. So we got to see the silhouettes of Claptrap, Craig, Tanis, Roland, and Tiny Tina.
In filming news, he's 70 years old. He's in his 70s. They just spotted him in the UK. I think Harrison Ford still looks incredible. But he's going to be donning the fedora and the whip yet again in Indiana Jones 5, which starts filming next week, believe it or not. It's going to be directed by James Mangold, of course, who did the Wolverine and Logan. Just incredible visionary, and I think he's perfect, for this. I don't think it's going to be the Crystal Skull all over again. Although I will say this. I don't really fully hate that movie. There's some things that I really do like about it, through the years, just kind of like the Star Wars prequels and stuff. I went back and I'm like, you know what, this isn't that bad. It's pretty bad, but it's not terrible. But this time around, he's going to be with Phoebe Waller-Bridge from Fleabag. And of course, Mads Mikkelsen is going to be playing the villain in the movie.
Perfect.
Which, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's perfect, right? And that guy, is just dominating franchises left and right. He's in Fantastic Beasts. He was in Star Wars Rogue One. His domination just continues. I could talk about Hannibal all day long.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that starts filming next week. And, I think it'll be cool to see Harrison Ford, dressed as Indiana Jones again. I think it's going to be awesome. Diana, what's next in Top Jedi?
So Jupiter's Legacy was canceled on Netflix. So this was an 8-episode show on Netflix. They actually invested $200 million into the show, which is pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. But it looks like Mark Miller is still going to be continuing the show with an animated series called Super Crooks. So this is going to be based off of supervillains that band together to plan this epic heist. To me, it kind of sounds a little bit like Suicide Squad, but less heroic. So,
yeah, the thing is with Netflix is they spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on this Millerverse, and they did. I guess they did as best as they could with Jupiter's Legacy. From what I'm gathering, I never read the books myself. I know that there's fans of the books. I think, the story, for the most part is pretty complicated. Kind of like this Godfather meets Avengers type thing, when it comes to family drama and stuff. And honestly, I only watched, bits and pieces of the show, but I can see how it didn't necessarily cater to fans of superhero fare. I think it just kind of went over their head a little bit.
There's so much variety on Netflix, so I can see how that can be a challenge to get the right viewership to make up for the investment that Netflix put into the show.
Jenna, what's next in Top Jedi?
So since we're dressed up like Loki, let's talk about Thor. Love and Thunder wrapped up filming. Apparently we are hearing that it's going to be crazy, off the wall funny, and they may be pulling a few heartstrings or two, which my heart's not ready for it, and I don't think many of us are ready for that.
Yeah, well, not to be gossipy hen or anything, but speaking of Love and Thunder, Taika Waititi. Yeah, man. He's got the thunder and the love
over Thor's arms.
Well, listen, let me tell you something. I saw a meme the other day that had to do with we should apologize to guys like Rob Liefeld who did comics back in the 80s, because they were the bodies were all disproportionate and everything. And Chris Hemsworth's huge in this movie. He doesn't even look human. Honestly,
he doesn't. I was like, did they Photoshop those arms? Oh my God.
But the thing I did love from that one photo is, I didn't know if you guys noticed or not, but that muscle shirt that he's wearing, I'm getting straight up Jack Burton vibes from that. That looked like Jack Burton, Big Trouble Little China a little bit to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in the last bit of Top Jedi news, there's actually, as we mentioned before, there was some news that came out just recently in the last couple hours. But Donnie Yen of Ip Man fame, and of course, Star Wars Rogue One and martial arts master, is going to be joining John Wick 4 that starts filming this summer. Yeah, so he's going to be playing a character that is, closely connected to John. They have the same, frenemies and friends and enemies and stuff like that. But I just watched John Wick 3, Parabellum, the other day. Oh, that movie still holds up, man. I love those John Wick movies. They're so fun. So yeah, it's going to be great to see Donnie Yen, being part of this world, because honestly, he should have been from the very start. So I think people are really excited about, this inclusion, because it just seems like something that should have been done already. But really, there's really no other news aside from that. John Wick 4 is going to start filming this summer. And there's some great stuff coming out, and this is just a great time to be a fan of all this stuff. I'm telling you, like, we're just going to get a constant wave. This week we decided, since the release of the new series is next week, seemed like we were waiting such a long time for a new series from Disney Plus and Marvel. It seemed like forever. I felt like I was in the desert after Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because it was just such an influx, you know what I mean? Like one after the other, like immediately after. So this is quite a bit of a wait. But they did, throw out little nuggets here and there with trailers and features and all this stuff. So, they did, kind of sate the appetite of the fans for the most part. But here we are, we're having a conversation about a character who, especially in the Marvel universe, is absolutely just loved, by so many people throughout the world. And this is a character that was originally created by Jack Kirby, decades ago, Jack King Kirby. And I'm gonna be real honest with you. I was a comic fan, obviously, since I was a little kid. I didn't really get too much into the Thor comics, so I don't really know like a ton of history about Loki as a character within the books. But there's no doubt that the introduction of Tom Hiddleston as Loki was one of the greatest things to happen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And here we are now. He's got his own show, which is pretty incredible. Like he is another. I don't want to say low tier character, because I think that's kind of degrading. But he wasn't like he wasn't an Iron Man. He wasn't a Captain America. He wasn't a Spider-Man for sure. But now, because of Hiddleston's performance, like he's one of the most iconic things within this world. Yeah. So, of course, we're going to be talking about the legacy of Loki. We'll start off with you, Jenna. So, what was it about Loki or Tom Hiddleston's performance that really just captured you and grabbed you as a fan?
As strange as it sounds, because I am pagan, and like my deity that I deal with a lot is Set, which is the Egyptian god of chaos. So like I immediately loved Loki, because I'm like, chaos gods, I see you. Like, so immediately going into Loki, I was already exceptionally biased towards him. But like coming from that kind of pantheon and knowing those backstories of like, the gods, not the character, he portrays that trickster that we know that to be our Loki as like a pantheon. So like he just embodies that, like that chaos, that crazy, that like unpredictability. And it's just, it makes my heart so happy, because it's nice whenever there's like no pun intended, but pun intended, low key kind of like nods to like, those actual character, like the actual gods. Again, I'm like you, I didn't really read those comics. I was more of an X-Men comic girl. But coming in kind of blind to it and already having that like mindset of being like, man, if they do this character weird, it's gonna like bother me, and I'm not gonna ever like this character. And he just hit the nail on the head with it. And like his connection with his brother, with Thor, like you can tell that those actors really like each other, and they're really like, they feel like a family, because it comes off so beautifully on screen that they work so well together. You'd never guess that they weren't brothers, how they act towards each other.
Well, let's that's an interesting point. So let's bring that up for a second, because I think we mentioned it in another show, but these are two actors. Like I remember when Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston like literally walked in to get these parts, and initially it was actually reversed. I think Tom was actually trying to get the Thor role.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And these guys have done like they've done some stuff, like in Australia or wherever,
England,
but they didn't necessarily have this clout, you know what I mean? So like when like just like anything else, people were like, oh, Marvel's gonna fail yet again because they got these nobodies to play these characters or whatever.
Those people are eating their words now.
Oh, most
Mhm.
definitely.
Ooh. But that
Yeah,
doesn't
so
taste
that's
good.
really fascinating, and it's a great testament to just, you know, like,
Mhm.
you know, I mean, look, we wouldn't be anywhere if Jon Favreau didn't believe in it, you know, in Robert Downey Jr. So it's kind of the same situation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, we believe in these guys.
Yeah.
And these are the guys who should play the parts. And yes, they are nobodies, but they will be somebodies very, very soon.
Yep.
So Diana,
Just to add to
yeah,
what Jen was saying, I always get the movies mixed up, but there's a scene where Loki is in chains and then Thor is talking to these other characters, and he kind of explains that story about how he's trying to pick up something and then there is a snake.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he improvised that whole scene, and
that was
Tom
Thor.
Hiddleston.
Yeah, that was Thor Ragnarok. He says, he goes, I remember when my brother knew I loved snakes, and then so I went to pick up the snake, and then he jumped back up, and it was him, and he goes, "Bah, it's me!" And he stabbed me, and we were only 8 years old.
Yeah, and Tom just went with it perfectly. Like, you can kind of tell how he was trying not to laugh, but
but you can see the twinkle in Chris Hemsworth's eyes, as you can tell that he has, you know, come up with this, and it's just, I have brothers, so it was like, oh my God, that is like, that's siblings right there. Like, you can tell me any different.
Absolutely. So Diana, I guess I'll ask you the same question. I mean, you know, like, what is it about Loki that was so, like, intriguing and so entrancing for you as a fan?
Tom Hiddleston is at a Comic-Con in 2013, and he comes out dressed up or decked out as Loki, and you can see how he embodied the character. You can see how passionate he was and how much he loved the character. Like, he demanded the whole room, and everybody worshipped him for it. I don't think that there could be anybody else that can play Loki better than Tom can. With that said, one of the other reasons why I love Loki so much is the fact that he's a misunderstood character like Nebula, you know, because he has to live under Thor's shadow, and then he is basically lied to most of his life, and it kind of turns him into this anti-hero. But he's so complex. You can see how he grows throughout the story as an antagonist and as the big bad, and then, you know, redeeming himself as a hero before sacrificing or before dying. And
I don't, you know what, I'm gonna piggyback off of that really quick, because honestly, like, I don't think anything that he does is not meticulously planned. I don't, you know what I mean? Everything down to a science. Like, he knows exactly what he's going to do. I do love also that, aside from just like all the comedic stuff, is that, you know, I know it's problematic, you know, because, you know, we're mentioning Joss Whedon or whatever, but the Avengers was fantastic. And, you know, the fact that, you know, we're really seeing for the first time in that is, you know, that Loki is absolutely a formidable force. And, you know, he, you know, just strategized everything, you know, in terms of, you know, breaking up that team, you know, because that was one of his initial plans. And then just, you know, like, just getting that Tesseract and being able to dominate the world in his own way, you know, creating his own army and stuff. He does have that ability. So, you know, I think that that blend of, you know, kind of like this silly and goofy trickster, you know, on top of, like, you know, just this antagonist that, you know, can really do some serious damage.
The man cheated death multiple times.
And cheated death multiple times.
Thank God. My heart couldn't take his death. In the theater, you actually heard me just, no, like, I just cried and cried.
I was there with you too.
So do you guys, like, really think, you know, at its core, I mean, obviously, like, you know, he did, you know, make the final self-sacrifice in Infinity War, but, you know, do you honestly think that this guy really does love his brother and, you know, love his Asgardian family, or is he just, like, is that all a lie too? I was always confused by that myself.
I think he does.
Yeah.
I think he truthfully does. You he does not, I feel like he does not want people to know that he cares so deeply for his brother. And I feel like that's the reason why he sacrificed himself, is because he was like, I have to, like, I love him and I have to, like, but yeah, I firmly believe that he does deep down love his family and love his brother. I think he loves his brother more than he loves like his family, like, you know, his parents. I feel like he loves them, but it's not like a lot. But I feel like his love for his brother is large.
Yeah, like I think that he did carry that resentment towards him for a long time, but when he told his brother the sun will shine on us again, like I think that he does forgive him. And I'm hoping that they explore more of that in the Loki series.
So I wanted to ask you guys, you know, of course, at the, you know, in the middle of Endgame during the heist scene, you know, we're in that position that gets us into the Loki series. There was actually a theory that was out there, you know, it was kind of touched on within the Marvel Universe as well. If you died in the snapping by natural causes, you couldn't come back.
Yes, that's something that's been heavy on my mind too about this series.
But if you were snapped away, then, you know, if they snapped you back, you could come back. But Loki was able to find a loophole, obviously, you know, and get the Tesseract and, you know, just shoot himself the hell out of there, like years before he ever encounters Thanos again, right? So, I mean, I have my own theories, but like I wanted to ask you, like, what you think these, you know, these effects, you know, like how are things going to change, you know, due to this Loki series? Like what are you seeing being like the real issue that's just going to cause ripples like throughout, you know, the timeline?
Seems like, you know, we have a variant of Loki, right? So I'm just curious about how that's going to create kind of a butterfly effect with other universes and timelines and things like that. I'm still confused about how this is going to work out, but yeah.
I mean, you start getting into like timeline, like craziness. It's might be hard to keep up with, or like, you know, there's so many possibilities at this point, like with the infinite, you know, timelines that he can now go into, like sky's the limit at this point. Like he may go back and like try to save himself like from Thanos, may try to like figure out a way to like defeat him before, like he may, you know, go crazy with it. You just don't know.
Yeah, like what you're saying, I think that there's a lot that's going to happen, obviously, but there's already a season 2 that's been greenlit by Disney. So I think that it is going to get pretty.
It's going to get wild, I'm sure, because like, again, he's a trickster god. He's chaotic. So like sky's the limit as to like what's going to happen in this series.
Well, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that whatever he did, just him escaping, you know, put the timelines in a position, or the multiverses in a position where maybe like Scarlet Witch, he does have the ability to kind of be in, you know, all those different places at one time.
Ooh,
right?
Yeah, that would be
so he
merger.
So he, you know, just that one escape plan, like just, you know, caused ripples throughout the multiverse. So not only did he affect the past, he affected the future and affected the history of the world. And I guess that's why you see, you know, kind of like this kind of DB Cooper style heist within, you know, the trailer and stuff, where he's wearing like a really dapper suit. He kind of looks James Bondish or whatever. You know, I think he needs to fix everything when it comes to history, because he just caused so much damage, you know, throughout this timeline. Of course, Owen Wilson is the one that's, you know, the one that kind of has to rein him in or whatever. And one of my favorite lines in that trailer was, you know, he's just like, you know, like, hey, you know, like, I'm going to do the right thing, or, you know, I'm going to be honest with you or whatever. And he just goes, you know, you've stabbed people in the back like 50 times. And he goes, well, I won't do it again. You know, like, you know, so I'm excited about
Owen Wilson.
This guy really, it's awesome that he's going to be part of the Marvel Universe. So
I'm excited. Like I've been a huge fan of his for so long, because like I love, like I just love him. So I'm just really stoked.
So I think that's why, you know, we're seeing Lady Loki and all these different, you know, like, you know, there's probably different forms of Loki throughout all these different timelines or whatever. It's going to be wild, man. It's going to be really wild, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do with it. But I think honestly, that's kind of like the main like plot point is that he just, you know,
Messes
he just
up
effed everything up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like everything needs to be fixed. Everything
If
needs
we
to be
get
refurbished.
a ton of different versions of Loki, if we get 5 seasons of Loki, I'm here for all of it.
Yeah, same.
So,
I will take him in any way. Like I love Loki. I've really come to like really cherish this character. Like
if we can find like different versions of Loki, like maybe a hippie Loki or
oh my god, please
the
give me a hippie
presidential Loki. I don't know what they're
I'm
gonna
excited
do.
about Lady Loki. Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is that, you know, like this kind of, you know, puts Marvel in a different position as well, because, you know, there are these, you know, supposed rules that are, you know, just like, you know, just trapdoor tight, you know, when it comes to people, you know, coming back or whatever. I think this whole thing will, you know, put certain things into effect that people didn't think could happen, like the return of Tony Stark, like the return of Black Widow, you know, from death, basically.
Yep.
I think it's going to really just alter everything. And the show in particular, I think, you know, just like WandaVision was focused on magic and witchcraft, you know, like, you know, Loki, you know, to many degrees is a magician. So this is, you know, focusing on, you know, on power again too, you know, like, you know, magical power and stuff. So that's cool too. I'm excited about that aspect as well. Cause, you know, like we got a little bit of a break, you know, with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is fine. But now we're back into the magic stuff. I'm really, really excited about that.
I'm just curious about how Loki is going to deal with more authority trying to watch over him. I think that's just going to bring
not well at all.
a lot more chaos. That I'm so excited.
The time variance authority is not going to be able to reel this guy in. Just not gonna, it's not going to happen. He already says in the beginning, he goes, you know, like, you guys are clowns. Like, you know, like you think you're, you know, like you're going to play some mental chess with me. Like, you're out of your head.
I'm just so excited for the chaos and the madness. This show just needs to happen right now.
Yep. And I do have to point out that they were shooting at the Marriott for Dragon Con, and like during the trailer, whenever it panned down, I was like, my home. Like, I love Dragon Con, and I was just like, oh.
So that's our show, guys. Make sure to watch Loki when it premieres next Wednesday. It'll actually be a Wednesday show for the first time on Disney Plus. We really love the character, and that's why we wanted to devote this episode to him. Think this, you know, this particular series is going to be great, and you know, there's really not much to say about it except for that. So big news, you know, before we end off here, is that Pop Jedi is going to become its own entertainment website. We are endorsed by Nathan Best in Comic Book Movie. He gives us all, you know, his best wishes. That'll happen later in the year of 2021. So we're really excited about that. You know, we've got so much stuff going on. You know, the interview with Richard Citrone coming up. There's going to be a lot to do when it comes to this brand. So thank you very much again, you know, for your support. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.